It's their type of life. They seem to get together in their little groups. They play their cards in the sun and have their gambling, and it's their way of life. They're quite different to the white people in that respect.
In what other respect do you think they're different?
Oh, I wouldn't say too many other. They work in our communities.
But they get less than the average citizen of the Shire here.
I wouldn't say they get less. I mean...
well, they don't have water, sewage or electricity for a start.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have the same means of getting it as the white person.
But how can they get it if it's not laid on?
Well, they can come up into the town, the same as the other people, and build in the town. Quite a number of them have built in recent years in the town. They show them how to use their finances and through the Housing Commission.
Do you think the town has any responsibility at all towards these people, Mr. Tompkins?
Not more than they've shown.
Head due west across billiard table grazing lands, deep into the black soil plains of southern Queensland, and sooner or later you strike Cunnamulla. It's a typical outback town with some of the finest sheep and beef cattle in Queensland. It's a prosperous town and a proud town. On the outskirts of town, hard alongside the local cemetery, there's something Cunnamulla is not altogether proud of, something that townsfolk, at least some of them, would sooner forget. Aboriginal fringe dwellings like these have become an all-too familiar sight. They tend to blunt reaction, often evoking a conditioned response of indifference rather than shock. With jocular contempt, locals refer to this as Hollywood. Here, in shanties of wood and scrap iron, live about 150 Aborigines and their families. They've occupied this camping reserve for the past 30 years. Home is about the size of an average garage. In them live up to a dozen adults and children. There is no electric light, no sewerage, and no water laid on. A few hundred yards from where these children play is the town's sewerage outlet. The stench is sickening. Children play in this vicinity regularly. This is one of only 4 taps that serve over 150 men, women and children in the camp. It's the only water available for drinking and cooking. Yet in the local cemetery nearby there are more taps, 5 as against 4, to serve the graves of the dead, than there are to provide water for the living in the reserve.
Good morning.
Frank Roberts, an Aboriginal minister with the Australian Board of Missions, visited Cunnamulla a few days ago.
Very pleased to meet you.
He met with the residents and inspected their homes. How did he find conditions in the reserve?
Deplorable, terrible in the extreme, and a blot on an affluent society.
Well, do you think conditions here in the camp would be tolerated if the inhabitants were white instead of black?
No, it wouldn't be tolerated 24 hours. The powers that be would immediately put into action a policy which would bring about the elevation or the uplift of a section of the Australian people, such as white people or migrants coming to this country. The Aborigines, on the other hand, are put into a special category, seemingly, in which the powers that be discriminate against them. And this is why Cunnamulla is just not one isolated place, but it's a pattern throughout Australia in which we come up against the appalling condition that exists here and elsewhere.
Would you say there's any racial discrimination here in Cunnamulla?
Yes, definitely. I still think there is a racial difference in the town.
In what respect?
Well, I feel sure that there's a lot of the white race would not like our friends, these Aborigines, living as neighbours.
Why not, do you think?
Because they feel that they probably aren't good enough for them.
Now, some townsfolk claim that a lot of the Aborigines on the camp spend their money in the pub and don't give very much to their wives and families. Do you find this is so?
Not at my point anyway, because I've got too many mouths to feed.
How many mouths have you to feed?
Oh, about 5.
How much would you earn?
Oh, about $85 a fortnight.
Would you go elsewhere if you had the opportunity?
My word.
You're prepared to pay rent for a house, would you?
My word, yeah.
Have you ever been given the opportunity?
No. There's no water laid on, no sewage, no decent showers, no decent homes to live in.
Now, your house is about 200 yards from the sewerage outlet, isn't it?
That's right.
What effect does this have in the summer?
And you're smothered in flies and smothered with mosquitoes every night.
How does this affect the children?
Breaks out in sores and a lot of kiddies.
What about in the wet season when it rains?
Eaten alive then. Trampling around in mud as well.
Now, it's often said in the town here that a lot of the Aborigines on the camp have only themselves to blame for the conditions in which they live.
No, it's not.
What do you think needs to be done then?
Well, I reckon it's up to the council to do something about it and the people in Cunnamulla district here.
If you were given a house to live in and pay rent, would you do so?
Yes, certainly.
Do you think most of the other people would?
They would, yes.